Hey guys, welcome back. It's your favorite Gimp with a Limp, and I am here with something I am very excited to have to the table to show to you guys, and that, of course, is Conflict of Heroes, Awakening the Bear, Operation Barbarossa, 1941. This is the third edition. This is the one you guys have been waiting on. This is the one I have been highly anticipating arriving since I met Uwe back during WBC last year, or no, actually the year before. Which one was it? Yeah, because no, it was this year we didn't go. It was last year that we went, and I was lucky enough to get to meet so many of the people from Academy Games, and I got to stop and talk to Uwe for a long period of time, and he was going over the changes they had made for Conflict of Heroes. And during that time, Mo actually introduced us, and Mo, told about my channel and what I was doing and how I focused on solitaire, war games. And he's like, hey, give me your information and I'll make sure to send you a copy when it comes out, because he is just one of the most generous guys you've ever met, especially if you get him drunk. And when he gets drunk, he gets really friendly. You guys make sure and watch that round table discussion video. It's in my discussions playlist because it was friggin' hilarious listening to those guys talk. But we went over everything, and like I said, he was nice enough to send me a copy of this, which I get to show you guys now. And I really got to say, Academy Games has just brought it up to the next level when it comes to their products, when it comes to the component quality. I mean, I thought I had my favorites when it came to the counters, but these are my new favorite. They feel so good in your hand. Let's see if I can get you guys to see just how thick. I mean, look how thick these counters are. They're gorgeous. They're heavy. They feel good on the table. They even, let's see if you can hear it. I mean, listen to the sound of that. The mat boards itself are nice and thick. 5 big mat boards come with this. I picked, let me back the camera up just a little bit. I picked a big map to play for you guys. This is a huge tank battle you guys are getting ready to see here. I'm trying to show off as much of the game as possible to you. There is one more map that is in the box itself. I couldn't fit any more on the table. Hell, I can barely fit this in the screen to show you guys. Now, these are not double-sided. If you watched Gimpy's Gal's guesses of this game, these map boards actually fold over. That's where the little crease is here. So they're not double-sided. She just hadn't unfolded them when she was looking at them. But I gotta say, this is some of the prettiest terrain that I've seen. I mean, look at these boards. They're just freaking gorgeous, and the counters look great on the board as well. Now, this first video, I am going to do what I generally do, which was just to give you a brief overview, the basics of the game itself, how it's going to be played. For those of you who understand Conflict of Heroes already, if you've played the second edition of not just this one, the Awakening the Bear, but the others that they have. I know there's Guadalcanal and the Poland one. I can't remember both of which. Oh my God, I want them like right now, guys. This is what they're putting out. This freaking outstanding, just quality components here. But like I said, some things have changed with this being third edition. They have made a lot of changes to how this game plays, and it's not little minor tweaks. There's actually a whole big thing with how units are spent in this game, which is where they become activated and they're no longer being used. So let's go over a few of those things real quick so you guys can see the basics of the game, and once we've covered that, we'll get in some actual gameplay for you. Actually, a couple more things I wanted to touch on real quick, just to go ahead and finish rounding out when it comes to components. One of the things that Academy Games has switched to, and this is Academy Games, not just the Conflict of Heroes, are these nice trays. I freaking love these things that come with the game Conflict of Heroes. This one comes with 3 of them. They hold all the counters and the expansion counters. Now, this is different. The previous one, the box, had a tray that would go in the entire box. I know that. This I like better because you can pull out just what you need. It can store the cards very nicely, as you can see. I like how they're doing this, and they just released that Agents of Mayhem as well, that Kickstarter's delivered, and I got that in, and they are using trays just like these that, of course, say Agents of Mayhem. So I like this change that Academy Games has switched to. These trays are just very nice. It does a good job of You see, holding the components in. The top holds on rather nicely. You do have to make sure you have the counters on, like tucked in there snugly in the right direction. Otherwise, it won't close because you can see it is very snug for the counters. But you get them in there right, holds it very cleanly. This is definitely a step up and an improvement. Unfortunately, I got to ding them right off the bat on one thing, though, and that has to do, let me grab one of these, with the cards. They are thin. I hate to say it, but they are thin. And it's not like they're so thin that they're unplayable, but again, let me see if I can get this focused in. Come on, focus in for me. You guys can see they are rather thin when they are in your hands, and it's not a game breaker, but I would probably sleeve these cards. Otherwise, you could end up tearing them. I mean, they're not like paper thin to have that kind of problem, but they are thinner than I would prefer. Like, they bend very easy, which makes it a little bit of a problem when you're having to shuffle the deck because you're having to bend it back and forth. Small gripe, honestly, when it comes to the components, they've stepped up everything else to such a level that if the thickness of the cards is the one thing that I've got a gripe about, I can live with it. Okay, so when it comes to Conflict of Heroes, this is a tactical game, okay? So you're going to have counters that represent things like individual vehicles or infantry squads, right? Like a fire team, something to that effect. Like this one, for example, is a Panzer IIF. I've got stacks of tanks that are getting ready to participate in this big battle that I have laid out here. Now, the counters are similar to tactical games that you played before. If you played them, you know, similar to this, like Lock and Load Tactical and 65 and other games of that nature. So I'm not going to go over in depth, but one of the neat things about this one is that the counters are directional. That's what that top green arrow is. It designates that that's the front of this counter, and there's actually a firing arc. So when you are looking at the counter, with this being the front, these are the 3 front hexes, and these are the 3 flank hexes or rear hexes, okay? And that matters when when you're using specific units, because some units can only fire from their front arc. Some units, like this tank, who has a circle around under that too, which is their firing number, that designates that it is turreted, so it can fire from all directions, but there's a penalty involved with that, and we'll get into that here in just a little bit. But also, these affect the defenses when it comes to the unit as well. So let's touch these numbers real quick. The top left, that is its firing number. So that's how many action points it costs to fire this unit. Now, action points have changed. We'll get into that here in just a sec because they've got a neat little system that has changed it. But the previous system used to be the tank would activate and it would have 7 points, all right, action points that it could use. So you might use 2 points to fire, and then that's its movement there. 1 point to move, and then another 2 points to fire, and so on until you would burn through all of your points, at which time the unit would become spent. That's what that side represents. It's no longer the case. We'll get into that here in just a sec. But covering the rest of the numbers, like I said, firing, top right, that is the movement cost. And then below that, you see that there is a little track symbol. Some vehicles do have a movement bonus, so to signify the fact that the unit moves faster. Because in this game, generally you're moving 1 hex, right? You might pivot, whatever. But some units do go faster, so if they have that bonus symbol, they can move an extra hex as long as it's certain types of terrain, like, you know, clear, roads, stuff like that. They can't move an extra hex into a building, but they do have the chance for extra movement. Bottom left of the counter, these are your firing numbers, okay? Red is for soft targets, infantry, and then blue is for vehicles, okay? So what you're going to do is, depending on what type of unit you're firing at, so let's say we are firing at a Russian tank here, okay? This one would use its blue number to fire at that, and that would be, the 4 would be subtracted from the unit's defensive number, and then you're rolling 2d6, and you have to beat that number to take it and cause a hit. We'll get into the specifics of it, but just to understand, the higher that number is, the more chance it is that you're able to damage and or destroy the unit that you're firing at. And the way you can tell which one that you're going to use is by the color of these numbers, because these are your defensive numbers. So the smaller number on our Panzer II here, we can see is a 12. That means it's flank defense. So if it's fired at from the rear, its defense is only a 12. But if it's fired at from its front, its defense is a 15. So it's a real easy way to understand it. You're going to use your blue numbers against blue targets. And if you're firing at them in their frontal arcs, you're going to use the higher number. If you're firing at them in their rear arcs, you're going to use the lower number, and that's how you determine it. You'll see it when we get into the gameplay itself, but it's a very elegant system, I got to say. I like it. Really easy to understand. Here at the bottom, that's just its range, and you can see the German cross for it being a German unit, and then the Russian star for it being a Russian unit. Okay, so when I was talking about this unit, I was talking about it spending so many points. Well, the way it was done previously is that you'd have a little player aid for each side. This is the solo player aid, so you're not going to have it, but just go with me on this. You would have your little player aid, and it would designate it, so you would put your counter, hey, this unit's activating, it's got 7, and then you would tick it down as you spent the points of the unit, right? And then once you couldn't spend any more or whatever, that's when the unit would become spent. However, it's different. Like I said, if you guys watched her guesses, she tried to figure out this die and was a little confused because the die is different. It's not a generic D10. It's got multiples. I think it's got, was it a couple of 1s, a 2, a couple of 3s on it, like a 4 or 5, maybe a couple of 5s, something like that. It only goes up to 7 as its highest number. And you're going to use these dice now, these D10s, to make your spent check. So let's say that this tank conducts an attack, okay? It shoots, fires, it's spent 2 points, okay? Well, now, instead of just keeping track of how many points you're going to spend, thanks to this weighted die, all you have to do is roll the die, and if the die is higher than the number, the cost, you're good, the unit is not spent. But if it's equal to or lower, the unit is spent. So if this unit were to fire and it spent its 2, you would roll your die. Hey, we got a 7, so it is not spent, and it goes to the opponent's turn at that point. But when it comes back to your turn, you get to activate this unit again if you want to. But now there's something called stress involved, which is where these little white crosses come into it, these little white X's. So it can help remind you that, hey, this unit activated the previous turn, so it's going to have stress. So any action that it performs this turn is going to cost 1 more than normal due to its stress. But you can keep doing that over and over. So if it were to perform an attack now, its cost would be a 3 thanks to the stress. So we roll, hey, it's 6. But let's say it was a 2. Well, that is under its cost. So equal to or under, then the unit becomes spent. And it's not able to activate again this turn unless you spend what's called command activation points. So to actually perform an action with a unit that's fully spent, right? It's already completed its turns, it's spent its points. You can spend that many command action points to allow this unit to go ahead and activate again. So we could spend 2 caps to allow it to perform another attack. You'll see how that works in the game, and caps can be used for so many other things besides just that. You can use it for helping with multiple different types of roles. Usually, generally speaking, up to a couple of caps can be spent to help out a role, like either making it easier to get an attack or defense or something like that. Like I said, you'll see that when we actually get into the combat of the game. But the point of this is that on average, your vehicles, your units, whatever, will get roughly the same amount of action points that they used to. So if there's an attack that costs, 4 or 5 action points to perform that attack, generally speaking, a lot of the times you're going to get spent after this like you would in the previous version. You wouldn't be able to attack more than once. But in this version, occasionally you will get that second or third or maybe even 4th attack off, because it just depends on what the dice, decide on that one. It adds a little more chaos to the battlefield, a little more randomness, and now your opponent can't make a decision based on, well, he's already spent, so many points and he's running out of cap, so he's definitely not going to be able to activate this unit again. Yeah, if he makes that attack, well, now he can't do that because there is a chance that the die roll might go in his favor and he could get off that second or third attack. So it puts that unpredictability into the game, and I really like that. Now, when it comes to Conflict of Heroes, they didn't just send me the core base game itself. They did send me the Solitaire expansion as well, which does come with some counters, some missions, but the big thing is this deck, which is going to run the AI. I'm not going to get long-winded on it, but just to quickly show you a card, you'll basically start at the top and work your way down, looking at your priority and tactical orders, and you'll perform the first one that is able to be performed, all right? You guys, anyone who's watched my channel with any regularity will have seen a system similar to this being used, so this isn't going to be anything, mind-blowingly new to you, but this will run the AI of the game. I love these Solitaire core cards. I really like how they operate. Also at the bottom, you see where it's got that greater than or equal to and then the number. This is where you'll look for the spent check for AI units. You'll draw a card to determine what orders they're going to do, and then you'll draw another card to see if they're spent, and you'll gauge that versus their action cost. Personally, and this isn't in the Solitaire rulebook, but I do believe that it should be fine to use the dice for the AI as well to make that determination. If you don't want to have to draw as many cards, I might try that a little bit back and forth and see if it works out roughly the same. But it does say in the rulebook itself to draw the cards, but it might be like the second edition, like the same version of the Solitaire game, because I really don't think they'd have to make a whole lot of changes to this to have it match up to the third edition of the game. So I'm thinking I might try it with the die for both my units and the AI units. I don't see any reason why that shouldn't work for both sides. Up here, we were showing this briefly a second ago, but point track, this is where it's going to be kept track of. This is both point trackers. It starts off with 1 for the Russians, and then if I, playing the Germans, gain advantage, then it flips over to my side and goes up and down. So potentially, as the game goes back and forth, this counter could flip back and forth between the numbers, going up and down, just depending on who's winning at that time. And then my caps are going to be kept track of on this track here. And there's something neat to that too. As I lose units, right? So let's say I lost a unit, this would get pushed down instead of the 8 that I started with, and my dead unit goes there. And it's going to keep doing that up until it gets down to this number where these darker numbers are, and then no more units are placed on. So by losing units, you can lose your command action points, kind of a way to signify that your cohesion is going down. Also, here is our mission summary for the mission that we are playing, the solo mission. It's number 3, Hunting Chernov. We won't get into all the historical blurb of it. Up here gives you the summary of how everything's going to be laid out, who has initiative, your cap allotments, victory points, all that good stuff. It does tell you about if you're playing with certain expansions, what cards to play, and they included for me the Rex expansion, which is part of all these counters that you see spread across the board. Some of these are the rumored enemy, and that's going to be potential enemy contacts that we won't know if that's an enemy tank or not until we actually get up upon it. It could be a no enemy counter. We'll have to just see what happens. We are going to randomly draw from a cup. These are the no enemy counters, and then the Russian units will go in there and they'll be drawn out for each one of these that we encounter. But I do think it's neat that the Rex markers are spread all across to kind of signify how there's been a lot of battling back in here, back and forth. So there's a whole lot of tank Rex already spread across the map. And some of them provide defense bonuses. Some of them provide weaknesses. Some can block line of sight. So it's like extra terrain. spread across the battlefield before the fights even started. Also, with the Rex expansion, you can use that when you're playing just a normal match and place these Rex counters when you lose a vehicle. Not going to be able to do it when we're playing this match since all the Rex are actually spread across the map anyway. But during a normal match, yeah, you could lose a tank and then you place one of these counters to signify whichever side. There's a German side and then a Soviet side, just depending on which unit was destroyed. Now, we'll show off a little more of this when we get into actual gameplay, but here is the mission track. It'll move along as we go through the rounds, obviously, but there are special events that will happen throughout the course of the game as we hit these certain rounds. But it's not guaranteed to hit every single round because there are cards in here that could potentially cause us to skip rounds instead of going through each single one. So all of these events aren't guaranteed. We'll have to see if they all happen. Up here at the top is our units that start the game. We'll touch on those here in just a sec. Obviously, special rules. And then here are the victories and then counteractions and mission orders. Some of these cards here for the solitaire do give the order to do a counteraction or a mission order. This is where that's going to be listed. And this is kind of neat. So they can make mission-specific orders, because these cards can't account for everything in these missions that they come up with. But when you're playing this mission, these orders for the AI get added in, and they'll have those orders for each one of these missions. There's a couple of different campaigns in here, a handful of regular just one-off solo missions as well. So I like how they've done that. It makes it to where they have variety, and you're not going to have the exact same orders for the AI for each of the different matches. Up here are the units that each side starts with. We've got our usual Panzer IVs, Panzer IIIs, Panzer 38s, and all this other stuff, Panzer IIs, and then over in the Soviets, some BT7s, T26, big KV1s. Real cool stuff, right? Got them all set out over here, but I was thinking about it. I was like, there was one other thing they sent me, and I think people would much rather see those on the board than those on the board. Let me grab this and show you guys. This is the monster tanks of the Eastern Front. This is freaking awesome. This has the Mouse. This has the King Tiger, the Ferdinand, the Hetzer, the T-34s, T-34-85s, Su-85s, KV-1Ss, Su-76. I mean, it has all the cool stuff that you want to play as, you want to fight, the stuff you see in World of Tanks. It even has the remote control Goliath tanks and even a Panther turret that's buried into the ground. Real neat stuff. They've got some extra infantry units down here at the bottom, partisans for the Russians, and then attack dogs. How cool is that? So what I have decided to do is, instead of those tanks, I'm going to use these tanks. I'm going to have the same amount. I'm going to try to get it roughly in the ballpark of what the general thing is. I'm not going to use the Mouse for my side because I think it's just such a beast. I mean, it's the monster. I don't want to give myself that much of an advantage, but I am going to give myself the same amount of vehicles that I would have had. I'm going to add in that little car there because I do have an armored car for me. So the Soviets are going to get 11 of these tanks. I think they're going to be a little better off as far as tanks are concerned because they have more units of these large monster tanks that have actual turrets. Remember, that's the white circle there at the top left being underneath their fire number. They have more actual tanks that they're going to be using, and I have a lot of the anti-tank stuff like the Ferdinand, the Nash Horn, which I don't know as much about that one. That one's going to be in there. The Jagdpanzer, the Stug, all of those I'm going to be using into this. So we're going to break open this expansion, throw it onto the board. All right, so there we go. I've got it punched out. A bunch of units for each one of us. I've got 9 for me, 11 for the AI. So that way they're going to match up. To kind of stick with the purpose of this match, the mission is to take out the tank commander for the Soviets. So since he was in a KV-1A in the actual mission itself with the regular units, I'm going to put him in, I think it's the KV-85 is going to be the one. There were 2 KV-1As. So in the original one, it was going to be the second one that you drew was going to be considered the commander unit, and it was going to have a control point placed underneath it. But instead, I'm just going to have it when this one's drawn, that's going to be it. Yeah. So we're going to do this one is going to be the commander for the enemy. So when this guy pops up, that's the goal. Take him out. I mean, we'll get victory points for taking out the rest. I don't know how exactly fair this is going to be. I think the units are rather close. Like I said, I think just by glancing at the counters that the Germans have just a touch more firepower with their units. The Soviets have maybe a touch more armor and more mobility with their arcs of fire and stuff like that. So we'll see how it balances out. But I thought you guys would get a kick out of seeing not only this huge map laid out across the table, but also the wreck spread across, changing the gameplay itself, and then monster tanks. Because who doesn't want to see King Tigers and Hetzers and stuff like that on the board instead of just a Panzer II? Come on, yeah, you guys want the King Tiger, right? Is this my king? No, it's a Stug, but come on. Who doesn't love the Stug? Come on, look at that thing. Stug 4. Gotta love it. But you'll see, obviously, they have a lot more firepower, a lot more armor, so I figured, it's going to balance it out. All right, so there's a lot of stuff we haven't covered yet as far as the game's concerned. New stuff for 3rd edition. I don't want to run off forever talking about it, though, so we're going to pick back up with the gameplay itself. These Soviet units are going to be going into our draw cup, and my German units, they're going to be entering here from the southern side of the board, and I'm thinking, as my general plan, that I might split my forces up a little bit, have 3 tanks come in from the left, 3 tanks come in from the center, 3 tanks come in from the right. That way we can kind of clean them as we go. I was thinking maybe send them in all together, but then I would be worried that I might overpower them because the AI spread across the board so much that if I'm all bunched up, they're just going to get ruffle stomped. So I'm thinking this way will give us a fair match and something fun to watch. All right, but you guys stay tuned. I will have that up for you guys very soon. If you have any questions or concerns about the new 3rd edition that you want to know, feel free to put them down in the comments and I will get answers for you. All right, you guys take care. I'll catch you in the next one.